Sagittarius. When loyalty turns into a cage you don't realize you're in. It's Sophia here and welcome back to Zodiac Wisdom, my beautiful Sagittarius souls and all the loyal hearts who have walked with me through countless journeys under the stars. You've been here, listening, reflecting, growing. Together we've shared truths both gentle and fierce. Today, I want to speak to a part of you that may not have a name yet, but you've felt it in the quiet hours. Sagittarius, loyalty has always been your crown and your compass. When someone has stood by you in your weakest moments, you've etched them into your heart, as if their presence was part of your own survival story. You remember their kindness like a desert remembers rain. Rare, life-giving, unforgettable. But here's the part we rarely talk about. Sometimes that gratitude grows roots so deep it becomes a quiet cage. Not because they've locked you in, but because you've built the walls yourself, brick by brick, with memories, devotion, and the fear of letting them down. The cage is soft, almost comforting. You don't even notice it. Until one day you see a horizon your spirit aches to reach, and you feel the invisible tug holding you back. My loves, this is not about breaking bonds. It's about setting them free to evolve. Stay with me, we'll walk through this together. And if you found meaning in our time under the stars, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so our journey never loses its light. Gate 1. When memories become chains you didn't notice you were wearing. Sagittarius, let's step back with me for a moment. Not into the chaos of your present, but into the tender corners of your past. Close your eyes and remember the moment you were at your most fragile. Maybe you were facing the kind of heartbreak that makes your chest feel hollow. Maybe you just lost something you thought you'd never live without: love, stability, a dream. And in that moment, when the world felt stripped of color, someone stayed. They didn't just stay physically, they stayed in a way that told you, I believe in you even when you don't. They were the voice that steadied your shaking hands, the presence that made you feel less alone in the endless night. And because Sagittarius loves fiercely and remembers deeply, that moment carved itself into your soul. You told yourself, quietly, firmly, I owe them my loyalty for life. Here's the thing about loyalty, though. When it's pure, it's a gift. But when it's tied too tightly to the past, it starts to morph into something else. Something that binds you instead of freeing you. What was once a warm bond becomes an unspoken contract. You feel like you must always repay what they gave you, even when the repayment costs you pieces of your own joy, your own path, your own expansion. Think of it like this. Imagine someone once pulled you out of a river when you were drowning. You are eternally grateful. How could you not be? But now, years later, they're standing by another riverbank. They're fine, they're safe, and you're headed toward the sunrise across the water. Yet a voice inside you says, what if they fall in again? Shouldn't I stay close just in case? You begin to hover nearby just to be ready. Before you know it, you've stopped walking toward your sunrise entirely. I've seen this in so many lives, clients, friends, even in my own story. A Sagittarius woman once told me about the friend who took her in when she had nothing. No job, no apartment, no self-esteem. This friend offered her a couch, a warm meal, encouragement. Years passed and my client rebuilt her life, found success, and wanted to move to another city for her dream career. But when she told her friend, there was a pause. Not disapproval exactly, but a shadow behind the smile. Comments like, that's so far away. Who will I talk to every night? Or, I'm just worried about you out there. My client delayed her move twice. By the time she finally went, she realized she'd lost 2 years. Not because her friend told her don't go, but because she couldn't bear to take a step that might make her friend feel abandoned. And this is the subtlety of Gate 1. It's not about someone holding you back with force. It's about you binding yourself with the silk ribbons of memory and gratitude. They're soft, they feel gentle, but they keep you tethered all the same. Here's where astrology whispers truth. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion, wisdom, and journeys. Your soul's blueprint is wired for movement, for the leap of faith, the open road, the horizon that always calls. When you anchor yourself too tightly to a single point in the past, you're moving against your own cosmic current. And moving against your own nature? That's where the heaviness begins. You might start noticing it in subtle ways. You hesitate to share your biggest dreams with them, because you don't want them to feel small in comparison. You decline opportunities that would take you physically or emotionally further away. You feel a slight guilt when you imagine a life that doesn't have them at the center of it. And guilt, let's be honest, is a terrible navigator for a Sagittarius heart. The emotional trap here is that your mind frames it as honoring the past. But true honor means evolving. True gratitude says, because of what you gave me, I now have the courage to fly further. False gratitude says, because you gave me this, I must never outgrow the space we shared. I'm not telling you to erase what they've done for you. Far from it. Those moments are sacred. But I am telling you that the best way to honor someone who helped you rise is to keep rising. Imagine you saved a bird once. It was injured, trembling. You fed it, sheltered it, gave it a safe place to heal. Wouldn't the greatest joy be to see it take flight again? If the bird stayed forever in your care, afraid to leave the cage because it didn't want to hurt you, wouldn't part of you ache for the life it wasn't living? The same is true here. The person who once gave you their strength may not consciously want to hold you back. But sometimes people grow attached to the version of you that needed them. When you step into a new, stronger, freer version of yourself, it can unsettle that balance. And without realizing it, you might shrink yourself to keep things feeling comfortable. Sagittarius, you are not here to live comfortably. You are here to live expansively. That doesn't mean recklessness or cruelty. It means honoring your nature, your path, and your soul's contracts with the places, people, and dreams you have yet to meet. The first key to unlocking this gate is awareness. Ask yourself, if I met this person for the first time today without our shared history, would I still choose to shape my life around them? If the answer is no, then it's time to acknowledge that you've been living in a cage woven from old kindness. It's okay to thank someone for their part in your story and still turn the page. In fact, it's necessary, because every time you choose the horizon over the cage, you are not betraying your loyalty. You are embodying it. You are showing them that what they gave you worked, that it empowered you to keep moving forward. And maybe, just maybe, it will inspire them to do the same. Gate 2. When you trade your freedom for the familiar safety. Sagittarius, freedom is not just something you enjoy. It's the oxygen you breathe. Without it, the sparkle in your eyes dulls, your laughter grows quieter, and your adventurous spirit starts to feel like a bird with clipped wings. Yet there's a strange paradox here. Sometimes you give up that very freedom willingly, even gracefully, because the comfort of the familiar feels like a warm blanket you're afraid to toss aside. The person you feel loyal to, the one who once stood by you, never actually told you to stay. They didn't chain you to a chair or lock the door. Instead, the cage is made of subtler materials. A shared routine, unspoken expectations, and the quiet fear of what will happen to them if you soar too far. It's not control. It's the silent understanding that we've built something safe here. Don't break it. At first, it doesn't feel like you're giving anything up. You tell yourself you're just taking things slow, or waiting until the timing feels right. But slowly, you start saying no to opportunities you would have once leapt toward. A job in another city, a trip abroad, a project that lights you up but takes more of your time. These start to feel risky, not because you doubt your abilities, but because you fear disrupting the balance you've created together. I remember speaking to a Sagittarius man who had been offered a dream position overseas, something he'd visualized for years. But his closest friend, the one who'd been there for him through a painful divorce, reacted to the news with a lukewarm smile and the words, "Wow, that's far." No outright discouragement, just a slight dimming of enthusiasm. And because Sagittarius is so attuned to emotional currents, he felt it. He told himself, maybe I'll wait another year. I don't want them to feel like I'm leaving them behind. That year turned into 3. By the time he was ready again, the opportunity was gone. This is how trading freedom for safety works. It doesn't happen with one dramatic decision. It happens with dozens of tiny hesitations, each one so small you barely notice the cost. Until one day, you wake up and realize your world has grown smaller, not because of external limitations, but because you've been living within someone else's comfort zone. Astrologically, this is where your ruler, Jupiter, begins to feel restrained. Jupiter wants expansion, exploration, a life lived in big, bold arcs. But when you keep looping within the same familiar patterns to preserve harmony, you start to feel a quiet restlessness. Uranus, the planet of liberation, whispers in your ear, but you silence it because disruption feels dangerous. The thing is, familiar safety isn't inherently bad. There is beauty in shared history, in knowing someone so well that words aren't always necessary. But when safety becomes the primary reason you stay in place, it turns into a golden cage. Comfortable, yes, Beautiful, perhaps, but still a cage. Here's a truth you might not want to hear. Every time you choose their comfort over your growth, you're not just holding yourself back, you're also unintentionally reinforcing their own limits. You teach them that your evolution must fit within their boundaries, and they may not even realize they're doing it. Let's go back to the mountain metaphor. You've been climbing with this person for a while and you've reached a plateau. The view is lovely, the air is clean, and it feels safe here. But higher up, you see peaks bathed in golden light. Your soul stirs. You want to climb. But when you glance back, they're sitting, catching their breath, saying, "This is enough for me." They don't forbid you from going, but you know that if you climb higher, the gap between you will grow. And because you don't want them to feel left behind, you sit back down. You tell yourself you'll climb tomorrow. But tomorrow keeps resetting to today. Over time, this subtle self-limiting becomes part of your identity. You stop thinking of yourself as the one who pushes boundaries. You start introducing yourself not as the explorer, but as the reliable one who always stays close. And while reliability is a beautiful quality, for a Sagittarius, it can become a mask you wear so long you forget your own face. Here's the hard question I want you to ask yourself. If the roles were reversed, if you were the one who once helped them in their time of need, would you want them to hold back their own dreams just to keep you comfortable? You already know the answer. Sagittarius loves deeply, but you love best when you're encouraging others to fly, not when you're clipping their wings. To break this pattern, you don't have to sever ties or burn bridges. What you do need is to realign your loyalty, not to the past, but to the truth of who you are now. That means making decisions from a place of possibility, not fear. It means having the courage to say, "I am grateful for everything we've shared, and I still need to see what else this life has to offer me." You may be surprised at what happens when you choose freedom over familiar safety. Some people will rise to meet you, inspired by your leap. Others will drift away, and that's okay. Every relationship is a living thing, and not all are meant to last forever in their original form. Remember, Sagittarius, your spirit is designed for expansion. When you suppress that, you're not just dimming your light, you're dimming the part of you that gives life its meaning. Safety has its place, but it was never meant to replace the wild, exhilarating call of your true path. And once you recognize that, the golden cage begins to lose its shine. Gate 3. When the relationship no longer reflects who you've become. Sagittarius, you are a sign in constant motion. Not just physically, but spiritually, intellectually, and emotionally. Your nature is to evolve, to expand beyond your own horizons, to discover new truths and integrate them into your being. Yet there comes a moment in some relationships where you realize the person standing across from you isn't looking at you anymore. They're looking at an older version of you, a snapshot frozen in time. And as comforting as that nostalgia might feel, it can also be quietly suffocating. Think about the earliest version of yourself they fell in love with, whether as a partner, a friend, a mentor, or simply a constant in their life. Maybe it was the version of you who was vulnerable, in need of support, still unsure of your own strength. They loved that you needed them, that you shared your wounds openly, that you leaned on their presence to steady yourself. And in that time it was real. It was beautiful. But growth changes the dynamics. As you heal, as you step into your confidence, as you begin to shine with a light that's self-sustaining, something shifts. For some, it's a joyful moment. They celebrate the new you, cheering you on as you embrace your next adventure. But for others, it's disorienting. They don't recognize the stronger, freer, more self-directed version of you. Without meaning to, they begin pulling you back toward the version they're most comfortable with. I once worked with a Sagittarius woman who had rebuilt her life after years of financial struggle. In her hardest season, she had a friend who constantly encouraged her, offered her help, and kept her company. But when her business began to thrive, that same friend became oddly distant during celebrations. She noticed subtle comments like, "Don't forget where you came from," or "You've changed," spoken not with admiration but with a quiet edge. She realized those words weren't about gratitude or grounding. They were a reminder that her growth was making the other person uncomfortable. Astrologically, this is a tension between Jupiter's expansive nature and Saturn's attachment to the known structure. Jupiter in you wants to leap, explore, and live out the fullness of your destiny. But if someone close to you is deeply Saturnian in their energy, they may resist change, not because they wish you harm, but because it disrupts the stability they've built around your old self. The danger here is subtle. You start adjusting, dialing down your joy so it doesn't seem like bragging. You share fewer stories about your adventures, editing out the most exciting parts because you can feel the disconnect in their responses. Over time, you realize you're no longer being fully seen or celebrated. The relationship still exists, but it has become a space where you must shrink to fit into the mold they once knew. It's like being a tree that has outgrown the pot it was planted in. The pot once kept you safe, contained your roots, and helped you survive. But as you've grown taller, the pot has stayed the same size. Your roots now press against the edges, seeking more space. If you stay in that pot too long, your growth becomes stunted. The branches that were meant to stretch toward the sky begin curling inward, not out of choice, but because they have nowhere else to go. For Sagittarius, this mismatch between who you are now and who they still think you are can be one of the most painful realizations. It's not that they've turned into an enemy, it's that they've stopped being a mirror that reflects your truth. And without that reflection, the relationship risks becoming more about the past than the present. You may ask yourself, am I being disloyal if I outgrow this dynamic? That's the loyal heart in you speaking. The part that remembers every kindness, every shared moment, every time they stood by you. But here's the reality. Staying in a connection that no longer supports your evolution isn't loyalty. It's self-abandonment. True loyalty is reciprocal. It evolves as both people grow, finding new ways to connect at each stage of life. I know it's tempting to think you can maintain the bond by simply showing less of yourself. But the cost of that is profound. You start creating two versions of yourself. The one they see, safe and familiar, and the one you really are, vibrant and limitless, shared only in spaces where you feel truly free. That split takes energy to maintain, and over time, it erodes the authenticity that Sagittarius values so deeply. The truth is, the relationships that are meant to last will adjust to your growth. They'll ask curious questions about your new passions. They'll want to hear the whole story of your adventures, even if they don't fully understand them. They'll trust that your expansion doesn't threaten the bond, it enriches it. But when someone resists that evolution, it's often because your transformation forces them to confront their own stagnation. Your growth is a mirror, showing them where they've stopped pushing themselves. And not everyone is ready to face that. Sagittarius, you cannot dim yourself to make someone else feel more at ease with their own choices. You cannot pretend to be a past version of yourself simply to maintain harmony. The journey of your life is too short, too rich, too expansive for that. So here is the invitation. Ask yourself who in your life still sees you clearly in your current form, not just as you were, but as you are becoming. Those are the connections worth investing in. The rest may need to be lovingly loosened, not out of rejection, but out of respect for the truth that people grow at different speeds, and not all paths are meant to stay parallel forever. When you honor the version of yourself that exists today, you create space for relationships that match your current frequency. And when you live fully in that space, you don't just keep evolving, you give silent permission for others to do the same. Gate 4: the lesson of healthy loyalty. Loyalty, Sagittarius, is one of your most sacred values. It runs deep in your veins, not as a transactional expectation but as an unspoken promise. If I commit to you, I stand with you. This is why you can't simply detach from people who have been part of your journey, even when the connection no longer nourishes you. For you, loyalty is intertwined with gratitude, memory, and the belief that bonds are worth protecting. But what happens when loyalty shifts from being a mutual strength to a silent restraint? That's the question this final gate asks you to face. The healthiest form of loyalty is alive. It moves, breathes, and adapts as both people evolve. It's not about standing still together. It's about walking side by side, even as the road curves into unfamiliar terrain. In astrology, Jupiter, your ruling planet, teaches expansion, optimism, and truth-seeking, while Saturn teaches responsibility, structure, and commitment. Healthy loyalty blends both. The Saturnian steadiness that makes you dependable, and the Jupiterian openness that allows relationships to grow without fear. But when Saturn's energy takes over without Jupiter's light, loyalty can calcify into obligation. That's when it stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like a cage. One Sagittarius man I once guided faced this exact dilemma. In his early 20s, a friend took him in when he was broke and uncertain about his future. That friend became a lifeline, someone who reminded him of his worth when he had forgotten it himself. Years later, after building a thriving business, the Sagittarius still kept that friend close. But he noticed something unsettling. Whenever he talked about new opportunities, the friend would steer the conversation back to the old days or subtly question whether he was taking on too much. The Sagittarius kept the bond alive because he felt that leaving or changing the dynamic would be ungrateful. But over time, he realized he wasn't staying because he wanted to. He was staying because he feared being seen as disloyal. That fear kept him from fully stepping into the new life he had worked so hard to create. Sagittarius, here's the truth you need to hear. Loyalty should never require you to abandon yourself. You can honor the past without living inside it. You can be grateful for someone's role in your healing without making them the gatekeeper of your future. True loyalty respects both your need for freedom and the other person's right to their own journey. The key is understanding the difference between loyalty as devotion and loyalty as debt. Devotion is freely given. It's fueled by love, respect, and the joy of shared growth. Debt, on the other hand, feels heavy. It demands repayment in the form of your time, energy, and sometimes even your dreams, often without either of you consciously realizing it. If you've been loyal out of debt, you might notice certain signs. You avoid talking about your new achievements because they might trigger discomfort. You make decisions based on how they will keep the peace, not on what's right for you. You find yourself replaying the question, "What would they think?" before you move forward. These are not the signs of a healthy, evolving connection. They are symptoms of a bond that stopped breathing. In your chart, the 9th house, your house of truth, freedom, and higher vision, reminds you that your soul's loyalty is ultimately to your own growth. This isn't selfishness, it's alignment. Because when you live fully in your truth, you naturally offer more to others, not less. A Sagittarius who is free, inspired, and in motion is infinitely more generous than one who is stuck, resentful, or burnt out from carrying relationships past their natural lifespan. Think of a bird that loves its nest. The nest gave it shelter, safety, and warmth when it needed it most. But a healthy bird still leaves when the time comes, not out of ingratitude, but because its nature is to fly. Staying forever in the nest doesn't honor the nest. It dishonors the wings that were always meant to spread. The same is true for your relationships. Loyalty means acknowledging when it's time to adjust the dynamic so both people can keep growing. Sometimes this adjustment doesn't mean walking away entirely. It might mean shifting the boundaries, spending less time in old patterns, and introducing more space for individuality. It might mean having a vulnerable conversation about how you've changed and what you need now. And yes, sometimes it does mean letting go completely, because clinging to something that no longer fits can drain the energy you need for the next chapter of your journey. The beautiful irony is that when you practice healthy loyalty, you often inspire others to do the same. By choosing not to betray yourself in the name of devotion, you show them that relationships can survive change, and even thrive because of it. You model a loyalty that doesn't trap but liberates, that doesn't guilt but encourages, that doesn't freeze time but honors its flow. So ask yourself, if loyalty was no longer defined as staying the same, what would it look like for you? Could it be expressed through cheering each other on from different places? Through trusting that the bond won't shatter just because you've grown into new territory? Could it be as simple as telling the truth about who you are now and trusting they'll either walk with you or bless your path as you go on ahead? Sagittarius, you're not here to carry every connection from the past into the future. You're here to live in alignment with your soul's calling. Those who are meant to be part of that calling will keep pace with you. Not because you force them to, but because their hearts are as open to change as yours. The lesson of healthy loyalty is this. You can be both grateful and free. You can honor where you've been without sacrificing where you're going. And above all, you can love someone deeply without making yourself small to stay in their comfort zone. True loyalty, the kind that endures, is the loyalty you first give to yourself. Conclusion: gratitude without chains. Sagittarius, you've walked through each gate and seen the truth. Loyalty is a gift, but only when it's given in freedom. When it becomes an unspoken contract, when it asks you to silence your dreams or stay in places that no longer feed your soul, it stops being noble and starts becoming a cage. And the most dangerous cages are the ones that look like safety. The heart of your journey is understanding that gratitude and growth are not enemies. You can hold immense appreciation for those who stood by you in your darkest hours, while still answering the call of the horizon. You can keep the memory of their kindness alive without binding yourself to the exact version of yourself they first knew. That is not betrayal, it is evolution. In astrology, your Jupiter soul is meant to explore, to expand, to keep discovering what else is possible. The moment you stop moving because you fear disappointing someone, you're turning away from your own nature. And when you turn away from your nature, the light in you begins to dim, not because it's gone, but because it's suffocating. So here's your invitation. Honor the bonds that have shaped you, but don't confuse honoring with staying. Let the people you love see you in motion. Let them witness your unfolding, even if it means they can't follow you every step of the way. Trust that the connections rooted in truth will adapt to your growth, and the ones that fall away are simply making space for what's next. If this message resonates, share it with someone who needs the reminder, subscribe for more guidance, and stay with me on this journey. Because your story is still being written, and the next chapter begins the moment you choose freedom.